The Great Depression was a nationwide economic crisis originating from overspending, inflation, and enormous debts resulting from World War I. It took place from 1929 until around 1941. One-fourth of the workforce was unemployed, 5,500 banks were closed, and 32,000 businesses went bankrupt during the duration of time. Many factors contributed to the beginning of the Great Depression. The 1929 crash of the New York Stock Exchange was a tremendous event preceding the Great Depression. During the 1920s, the increased need for consumer goods and products led to more production and more profits. Towards the end of the 20s, most prices in the stock exchange doubled, and many people bought shares in hopes of making a profit. The federal government then tried to lower the prices so people weren't spending so frivolously. On October 24, 1929, share prices at Wall Street dropped so swiftly that shareholders sold a record 16,410,000 shares. This came to be known as Black Tuesday. Thousands of people lost large sums of money, and uncertainty about the economy led to much less spending. The population lost faith in the state of the economy. As this continued, departments full of unsold goods piled up, and manufacturers reduced production by buying less raw materials and laying off workers. In 1930, many banks failed and wiped out many of the population's savings. Relief funds and safety funds had ran out, and many people who had lived previously comfortable lives had now become hungry and even homeless. These events that the United States had to overcome were just trivial compared to what they had yet to face.
Throughout the Great Depression, our nation was at its lowest point. Thousands were left unemployed. Since they were unable to make an income, many Americans were not able to pay off mortgages and other debts, and ended up homeless. People set up tents and shacks in nearby parks. These eventually came to be known as Hoovervilles. Farm families were wiped out because of droughts and dust storms, leaving them jobless too unless they could afford to move to California or other similar regions.
But the western part of the states had a very tough time during there were dust storms, there were very hot summers.
The land that they previously farmed on became known as the Dust Bowl. Food, clothing, shelter, and jobs were scarce. In 1932, at least 25,000 families and 200,000 young people were homeless. Financially, we were doing terribly, which tore families apart.
In fact, one gentleman that we knew took his own life. He jumped out of a high-story window building in Chicago, and so that his wife could get the life insurance.
Even our town was impacted, and we faced many difficulties locally.
The building on the corner of Wolf's Lane, right by the railroad station, is now used to be the post office, is now as a rental sign. That bank failed completely because people made a run on the bank, and they had to close down the bank, and people who had accounts there lost everything.
Our struggle affected not only all of the United States citizens, but some people from other countries too. Other people were also affected because merchants decided not to ship goods, and many other economies revolved around ours, causing a worldwide struggle.
The government finally took action when President Roosevelt created the New Deal. The New Deal was a group of agencies, administrations, and laws formed to help get the nation out of the Depression and get people back into work. One major act created was the Social Security Act. The Social Security Act provided money for people who had retired or were unemployed. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration supported the needy and charities with money. The Civilian Conservation Corporation gave jobs to thousands of men in conservation projects. The Works Progress Administration gave jobs, built roads, provided flood control, and constructed airports, hospitals, schools, and parks. The National Recovery Administration created and enforced new rules to have practices in both industry and business. The Securities and Exchange Commission controlled stock markets and protected investors from buying bad stocks and bonds. The National Labor Relations Board prevented unfair forms of labor and protected rights of workers who formed and joined unions. As a part of the CWA, the government chose people to help make murals to hang up in school all around the country. They were created to get artists back to work so they could earn spending money, which would put businesses back in action. If you were chosen, you would create the mural and get $34 per week. Pelham citizens participated in this program. They created beautiful murals. One represents the history of the arts and the other represents the development of science. The two murals hang on the north and south walls of the Pelham Memorial High School library for students to look at.
The Great Depression strongly impacted our nation, putting many lives at stake while pressuring the government to take action concerning citizens and big